Daniel Penny has been found not guilty of criminally negligent homicide. The jury deliberated for more than 24 hours across 5 days before reaching this verdict. We got Lauren Glassberg live outside the courthouse right now with the very latest. Lauren.
Well, David and Tanya, I can tell you there was a loud outburst when this verdict was read in the courtroom coming from relatives of Jordan Neely. And we understand that there's a increased police presence outside the courthouse, which is just behind me. You can't see the officers, but about 10 minutes ago, the officers moved in to secure the scene from the threat of possible protest, because this case did touch off a hot debate about race, about mental illness, about drug use and public safety issues. But we understand now this jury of 12 has decided that to acquit the defendant Daniel Penny in this case. He had first been charged with 2 counts, manslaughter and then criminally negligent homicide. But that first count was dismissed on Friday by the judge, and the jury was considering this morning that lesser count that could bring up to 4 years in prison. But the jury has acquitted him of that. This, of course, stems to a chokehold that Daniel Penny placed on Jordan Neely back on a subway in May of 2023. Neely entered that subway car. He was agitated, and by all accounts, he was making threats to riders. And then, of course, Penny is a former Marine. He stood up, and as he told police, he was just trying to protect people. He put Neely in a chokehold and held that hold for nearly 6 minutes. The prosecution had said that hold had caused Neely to die, but Penny maintained all along that, of course, he had no intent. He was just trying to protect riders. And today, that is what the jury found, that there was no intent, no recklessness. And in the case of negligent homicide, the lower standard, there was no blameworthy conduct on Penny's part. So we will be watching to see what happens here outside the courtroom and following all the latest. We are live with this breaking story in Lower Manhattan. Lauren Glassberg, Channel 7 Eyewitness.
Okay. I wanted to read you this what I found on TikTok. All right. About Jordan Neely. This is what it says. All right. Okay. Try to stay away. The Reddit is from Corazon DeLeon. This is 10 years ago. Try to stay away from Michael Jackson impersonator if you see him. He used to be cool, dancing to MJ in the Michael Jackson in the subway train, but as of late he's become a maniac. Sometime in late spring, early summer, I saw him in the train. His radio screwed up, and he was angry as hell, cursing and bad-mouthing commuters, screaming, "What the F are you looking at? Don't effing look at me." Totally didn't expect him to act as such. Ever since that day, he's just been scary dude to me. He doesn't dress up anymore, no more dancing, just asks for money, occasionally shouting obscenities. Today, however, was odd. Sometime in the morning, on my way to school, I'm sitting on the bench, and out of nowhere, hear someone just going off cursing up a storm. It was the MJ dude. Everyone besides this guy was quiet. An MTA crew was there, but did nothing, and just let him continue to blow his gasket. Train arrives, and I just get in the car. He's not because I'm sure as hell not getting in the same car as him. Dude didn't even wait till he got inside the train. I was scared for people next to him out of fear that someone was gonna fall on the tracks. Okay, this is something that he has, this is proof that he's had a history of doing stuff like this. Okay. A lot of people want to say, oh, this is New York City has a mental illness problem. I've said this before, and they're not doing anything about it. People have been pushed on trains. People um, have been hurt by homeless people or mentally deranged people, and they get a slap on the wrist. Okay. Jordan Neely, Daniel Penny, Jordan Neely, and all of us in between. I remember where I was 40 years ago when I learned Bernard Goetz had turned himself into the police in New Hampshire after shooting 4 would-be muggers on the New York City subway. It was my grandmother's bedroom. I had been watching her tiny television, adjusting the antenna to get a clear picture. His mugshot was electrifying. I was 10, and this was the man that adults around me in Brooklyn are calling a hero. People were tired of riding the subways in fear, and they felt vindicated by someone who had decided to do something about it himself. This week, Daniel Penny was cleared of all charges in choking Jordan Neely to death on the subway last May. People have been quick to call him the Goetz of our time. Yet we live in a different city. Crime is a tiny fraction of what it used to be, and the risk of robbery remains historically low. By most measures, the subways are no more dangerous than the rest of the city, but yawning gaps in our ability to prevent mental health crises on the subway have New Yorkers on edge. Okay. For decades now, in the name of humane treatment for people with serious mental illness, institutionalization has been replaced by a patchwork of outpatient alternatives that haven't proven especially effective for many people, nor kept pace with demand. Acknowledging this problem, the Adams administration is trying to be assertively engage people in distress and bring them in for psychiatric evaluations and treatment. Here's the thing, all right? They don't just need psychiatric evaluation. They need to be placed in a facility where they can't hurt anyone. Okay? I've had friends who worked in the healthcare system, and they have told me stories about these mentally ill people. They just keep them there. That you give them a place, they roam the streets, and then they just have a place to stay if they want to. They don't teach them how to clean up after themselves. They don't teach them life skills. They have them in these rooms, and I've listened to my friends who work there that the room was so bad, they destroyed it. Okay, it smelled so bad, they had to have maintenance. They had to basically break down the whole room, the whole unit. They had to break it down. Okay, just to rebuild it because of the way they kept it. It was horrible. Also, the fact of the matter that the shelter system doesn't really care for homeless people. They just house them there because each one is worth $5,000 a piece. Okay, so you have a whole bunch of homeless people in there. Some of them are mentally ill, some are not, and you're putting people's lives in danger. Okay? New York City is a horrible example of what it is when you let people who are mentally unwell fall through the cracks, just like Jordan Neely. Jordan Neely was trying to get help, but he got turned away by Bellevue in New York. I've said it before. Okay? Still, nearly every commuter has a story of enduring an outburst or wondering if they need to flee their subway car or the platform. The chances of getting randomly shoved onto the tracks by violent strap hammering are small, but it happens with a steady drum beat. And just the thought of it is terrifying. Today's Bernie Goetz is a citizen pushing back not against crime, but against unmanaged behavioral health problems. I spent most of my career in an NYPD around these problems on a big city scale, but they manifest across the country. When I served as a chief of police for Burlington, Vermont, there was a man, Mike Reynolds, who embodied the broken way we view the ideas of freedom and dignity for people with serious mental illness. By the time I left the force, he had been involved with police over 1,100 times. 1,100 times. And the number has since exceeded 1,700. He would assault business owners who asked him to stop harassing customers, swing broken tennis rackets at the heads of pedestrians, fling bodily fluids at police and firefighters. I once had to stop a car in the middle of the street while Mike finished urinating on the double yellow line, explaining to my son that as a state, Vermont had to decide to allow him to do this indefinitely. The one morning in bed, I sat up with a start. I realized we hadn't heard about Mike in a few weeks. I'd hired a veteran social worker to be the police department's behavioral health policy lead, and I gave her a call from home. Find out what happened to Mike. I told her he's either in jail or he's dead. Turns out he was in jail. Apart from dying, that was the only way the city would get a reprieve. It wouldn't have been involuntary psychiatric treatment, though officials had tried. I had formed a special state-level task force just about Mike to figure out what we could do to protect the people of my city while getting him effective treatment. After a few meetings that took a lot of patience on the part of the state's mental health leadership, the answer became clear to me. We could do nothing. Excuse me? The law set the bar for involuntary treatment so high that Reynolds would basically have to attempt suicide or nearly kill someone to meet it. Until then, he was free to walk the streets and act accordingly to impulse. And our only recourse was to keep charging him with crimes until one of them led to incarceration, which the judges were hesitant to impose because he was mentally ill. Between the concerns about liberty and the desire to not criminalize mental illness, it added up to circular neglect. This is why I would tell people, if you can, move to New York State or leave New York completely altogether. Go to a state where it's completely red and you don't have to deal with this. You don't have to deal with, because if a mentally ill person tries to act a fool in the suburbs, he's getting locked up. He or she is getting locked up, and they are going to a mental institution. They're going to a mental hospital. That's the only way to deal with this. That's the solution. Move to New York State, move to Long Island, move in the suburbs where the state has power to actually have a heavier hand when it comes to individuals like this. People will say, "Oh, you're being judgmental. You don't understand." No, I do understand. I understand that New York City, the people in charge of our safety, don't give a damn. That's what I understand. With these crappy laws, okay, that allowed Jordan Neely to die. Say what you want, that he was excessive, Daniel Penny. Say what you want. I agree that when everybody left the car, he should have let go. Let go, shoved them out of the car, all right, and then walked away. And if he wanted to, and if he wanted to try and attack Daniel Penny, then Daniel Penny will be in his right to defend himself. Okay? Because this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. And times are getting harder. All right? Not to be off topic, but the Canada Premier has said, right, that he is going to shut off energy. All right? Energy trade, meaning electricity, our lights, our basically what keeps the lights on. When that goes, we are going to be in trouble. Those street lamps that stay on, they're going to be shut off. You will be paying the bill, okay? You may pay the bill for your for the lights in your house. Guess what? The lights are not coming back on. You think it's bad in New York City now? Imagine if there is no lights on the street corners. This is what we're going to be dealing with. We're going to be dealing with a lot more Jordan Neelys. That's what we're going to be dealing with. And people don't get it. So these people who want to be on Jordan Neely's side, I want you to think about that. Because you're going to want some Daniel Pennies to step up. Because it may not just be one mentally ill person you got to deal with. Equal that you may not be able to walk away from. It may be 2 Jordan Neelys, 3 Jordan Neelys, 4 Jordan Neelys. Not to mention we have an illegal migrant problem now too. People coming over the border, and we don't know if they got lethal diseases. We don't know if they're mentally sound themselves. I remember I was talking about this today on the Blue app on Facebook, and someone was kind of trying to compare me to a sissy. I'm a sissy because I think self-defense is needed. And I also replied back, so I guess that black guy on the J train, was wrong, was a sissy because he defended his girlfriend against a mentally ill homeless person, right? He was sissy, right? See, this isn't a race thing. This is a mental health thing. This is mental health. This is an issue that's been going on in New York City for decades. And it's not getting better, it's getting worse. The New York City housing system, the shelters, are a joke. An apartment comes up to place a homeless person in, that person is in a shelter. They don't check if that man is mentally sound, if he's a functioning, mentally sound individual to get that place and be able to keep it. No, they just give it to him. So when he or she, all right, destroys it, okay, they just come right back into the system, and they're just a cash cow for them. And the cycle repeats itself. This is what we're dealing with. His condition deteriorated as he roamed the city until one day, hungry and thirsty, throwing garbage and threatening people, he boarded Daniel Penny's subway car. There's been lots of talk from the well-meaning people about how the system in the city failed Neely. They're not wrong per se, but they dodged the real question. The system failed because they presume offering voluntary treatment and services is the entire ballgame, when it falls short in countless cases. In lieu of prison, Neely was offered 15 months of supported housing and intensive outpatient psychiatric treatment. He absconded from the program after 13 days, and the city never enforced the resulting arrest warrant. This is what I'm saying. You really can't blame Daniel Penny. You can't. Most often, the system fails because it isn't serious enough about delivering critical care to people who are in no mental state to realize how much they need it and how dangerous it is for them to ignore that fact. And so it is no surprise it produces incidents like the death of Jordan Neely, and that juries find them lawful. We can argue about whether Penny held the chokehold too long, but subduing a man in crisis who declared someone is going to die today isn't vigilante justice. It's defense of self and others. He did say that he was ready to die. Come on now. So he said someone is going to die today. And people want to say, oh, he was just, acting out. He didn't need to die. Okay, he didn't need to die, but the man was threatening other people. Imagine if it's your wife, your daughter, your son, your father, on that train and he's acting up like that, saying someone's going to die today. You wouldn't want Daniel Penny to step up? If the government is truly a capable guardian, people have an obligation to step back and let professionals protect them. If not, they can act. Give the challenges police have meting out force with precision. We shouldn't be surprised when citizen encounters end badly. Chokeholds are prohibited by NYPD exactly because they are effective but hard to control. In the midst of a close-in struggle, an adrenaline person has tunnel vision and isn't thinking of his opponent's airway, even if they're well trained in the Marines. I doubt Daniel Payne wanted the defining moment of his life to be strangling a mentally ill man to death on the subway. But if Gord sent a message on the city's behalf to the muggers of New York 40 years ago, Penny sent one to its government. Criminals may be impulsive, but they can respond to incentives and deterrence. People with serious mental illness won't be chastened by Neely's death because that's not how mental illness works. Nothing will prevent the next death except a government that admits its approach has created these fraught and dangerous encounters and gives its police and mental health professionals more effective, high-impact tools to head them off well before they end in tragedy. The system fails because it isn't serious about delivering critical care to people who are in no mental state to realize how much they need it. And that's the truth. That is the truth right there. Liberty is only one ingredient of a person's dignity. Another is respect for their welfare. For people with serious mental illness, that means understanding how precarious their situation is, how vulnerable they are, and how compromised their judgment can be in the midst of crisis. Leaving them to their own devices in the name of liberty amounts to letting the most troubling parts of them determine their life and set their fate. It also means the people around them will see them as a threat more so than a person in a very human calculus of risk. The purpose of government is to prevent that because it degrades the dignity of everyone involved. Our systems are full of under-leveraged touch points where people in crisis can get help, from outpatient services to mental health and drug courts, psychiatric facilities, and even jails and prisons. Some settings will be involuntary. That doesn't mean that they aren't necessary or a way to respect the acute needs of the hardest to treat populations. We have a duty to use them with the good faith goal of returning people to society without shame or stigma. Consider that if we ignore these opportunities, the alternative will sometimes be a chokehold. Okay? That's it right there. Because to me, this isn't a race problem. Once again, this is a mental illness problem that New York City has neglected once again for decades. All right? You know, I see the relatives of Jordan Neely, and I'm not moved. I'm not moved. You know why? Just because to me, you didn't care. You did not care. You didn't get your son, you didn't get your loved one the help that they needed. I'm just being real. You didn't care. You didn't give a damn. This person had a long rap sheet with the law. You didn't care. I don't want to hear it. Because if you cared, you would have dragged him to get help. Oh, you missed the appointment? We're going over there. We are going over there. Where are you? You're going over there. If you have to fight, if you have to go to blows, and you have to drag him 1 foot, okay, to get him there, so be it. Because that's love. And what I saw was hate. You didn't care, all right? You didn't care. People can say whatever they want. They didn't care. That's all I got to say. You know what to do. Later.